starting with the nose, right? We did the nostrils, right? And it did them pretty dark. If you look at the nostrils here in the example on the slide, pretty dark, right? And remember, everyone has different size nostrils. Typically, your nostrils line up, the ends of the nostrils line up with the inside corner of your eyes. Okay, that's why I put these curved lines kind of lined up with the inside corner of both eyes. All right? Now, you do not need to draw the sides of a nose. We don't have lines on the sides of our noses, by the way. Okay? So that is the common mistake. I'm going to go ahead and erase this center line so that we don't get confused. All right? Someone choose left or right for me. It's okay, Elise. Someone choose left or right. Thank you, Fatima. Right. Yes, Elise, I am. And I literally just started. So we're going to act like the light is coming from the right side, which means, which is actually the same light source as this nose here and this nose. So that means the right side of our person's nose is going to be lighter, and then the left side is going to be darker, okay? Just so that we're on the same page. Which means, typically our nose comes all the way up, follows the bone of our eyes. So if you take your nose, or you take your finger and run it up the pointy part, or the bridge of your nose, which is what sticks out, and run it up your face, you'll notice that it hits your eye bone over here, your eye socket, I guess you can call it. And so that's where I'm going to start shading. Okay? And this is kind of a rough shading to it. And if you notice, it kind of hugs this left side of your nose, because on the right, this is like the pointiest part of your nose, and the right side of it will be lighter. Okay? So I'm just going to shade over on the left side, and then as you go down, I'm going to shade right in here. Let me zoom in on the nose so you can see it a little better. So this line here, or this shaded region, is going to be this part right here. If you notice here, that is like the bump. And yes, some people have that nose a little more rounded, or more like a circle, right? If you want to use someone as an example, like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, right? Everyone knows that huge circle. Obviously, that's an exaggeration. And so we just kind of want to highlight or bring that out with the shading on the left side, right? The other thing we're going to bring out, on the left nostril, there's a shadow typically right in here. See that? It just gets darker, and then you form a little bit of a shadow there. And then underneath that nostril, you will have a little bit of a shadow as well. I'm going to erase this little bit of this vertical line right here. Not the whole thing, because we still need it for the mouth. Okay? And so you'll have a little bit of a shadow right in here, just to show. Okay? And so I'm going to use my pencil sideways like this, and just to add a little bit more value. And I'm going to put some more value over underneath the eye, because again, light's coming from the right, and it's going to cast a shadow on the left side of the nose and a little bit on the eye. Now, the more you shade this, or the wider you go, the more wide your person's nose will be. So if you want to give him him or her a wider nose, then by all means shade more to the left. If you want to keep it more of a slim nose, then you keep it closer to the center. Okay? And I'll leave that part up to you guys. And also, like I said last class, feel free, if you want to give your person a piercing, you can. Right? I'm going to go ahead and also shade a little bit of the right nostril. If you look at this nose here on the right, or where I have my cursor, there's a little bit of a shadow. Not as dark as the one on the left, just a little bit more. Okay. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of value on the other eye, just a little bit. Again, just to show that it is kind of sunken into the face. And I'm going to add some shading above the eye as well on both sides, but more on the left than I am on the right. Be careful how much you're adding. If you add too much value or too much shading by the eyes, you run the risk of making your person look like they have a black eye. And then the more you shade around the nostrils, obviously the more rounded it'll look. Remember, we're sticking to more of a traditional, very simplified facial features, nothing too crazy or out of the ordinary. Typically, we will have a hot spot or a bright spot on the pointy part of their nose or on the bridge of their nose here. So our noses are the things that stick out the most from our face. So if you look at the side of my face right now, my nose sticks out. So when we get our photograph taken, our noses are the closest things that are going to be to the camera because they stick out. So therefore the light will hit our nose first and cause that hot spot as well. And sometimes you get it on your forehead too, a little bit, because our foreheads also stick out, right? So be aware of that. Okay. The last thing we're gonna add right below the nose are two lines. One line going to the left here and one line going to the right here. Very, very subtle, okay? Everyone has that. So if you put your finger just above your upper lip, you should notice two little dents that show up, right? Some of us have it more than others, and I'll go into why we have that in a minute. All right, let me zoom out. Okay. So our person is slowly starting to come to life, right? Before we do the mouth, let's do the ears, since we already have the eyes and the nose already down, okay? So last class I put two marks. One that kind of lines up with the top of the eye, and one that lines up with the bottom of the nose. So put those two marks in right now on both sides of your person's face, okay? So put a line that lines up with the top of both of your eyes, and then a line that marks or matches with the bottom of your nose. And hopefully they're the same. That way one ear doesn't look like it's lower than the other or higher than the other, okay? Okay, so the ears that we are kind of drawing are very similar to these two right here, okay? Because our person's looking straight. And yes, people have different size ears, right? But again, if a person has small ears, they will most likely have small facial features. If a person has big ears, then they will most likely have bigger facial features. For example, I'm going to use myself. So my ears are pretty big, I think, right? But also, my nose is a good size, right? Look at how far down it goes, right? So my earlobes line up with my nose right here. And the tops of my ears line up with the tops of my eyes. And I guarantee yours do too. So here's how you're going to draw them. We're actually not going to start, let me zoom in. We're not going to start our line at that line up here. This is just to tell us how high up and how far down we're going to go. We're actually going to start our line right here where this horizontal line is at. And we're going to go and curve it up. And then curve down. You can determine how far out you want to go for your ear, for your person's ear. I'm going to have an average size ear. All right, so it's going to curve out. And then you're going to draw just like a lazy S that curves closer to the face, towards the center, and then curves out, down, and up. Like that. Okay. Now, some people do have more of a curve to their ear than others. And some people have connected earlobes. and some people have disc or not connected earlobes. So I don't have my earlobes connected to the side of my face. Some of you, I guarantee, might. Not saying that that's good or bad, I'm just stating that that's a possibility. Okay. The other thing we're gonna add to this ear is, if you notice, there's like a little bit of a shark fin that we have in the inside of our ear that people get pierced, right? And it's just like a little rounded triangle that goes right in here. Okay. And then you guys know that we don't have any bones in our ears, right? That's why we can fold them up, right? And I'm sure some of your parents have probably like folded your ears up in half, making it look like a taco, right? And so now you're gonna do the same thing for the other side. We're not technically done. I just want to finish the other side first before we start showing you more. So on the other side, you can do the same thing. Start here at this horizontal line, right? Curve up and out, and then do the lazy S in, down to that lower mark where your earlobe finishes, and then curve it up, right? Hopefully they're both evenly distributed. Like for example, my left one, it seems a little wide, so I'm gonna bring it in so it looks more similar to the one on the right. And then doing that little rounded triangle close to the center of the ear, right? That is the general shape of an ear, right? Now what we're gonna add, there's a few lines that we're gonna add, specifically at the top, right? The thickness of our ear where it curves, right? I'm sure some of you guys have probably messed with like your ears and bending it and seeing like how far it can bend or whatnot. And so we technically have another line here. Starts here, hugs the outside line we made of our ear, and then hugs the outline until it goes down to the earlobe right next to that little curved or rounded triangle we drew, and then it goes back in to the side of our face. This will also determine how big you make your earlobe. If you curve it further down, it'll make your earlobe look smaller. If you curve it a little higher, it'll make your earlobe look bigger. Okay? So I'll leave that up to you how far down you want to go on this line to make it your earlobe. All right, you're going to do the same thing for the other ear. Okay, you start here, curve up, and then you hug the outline of that ear down towards the bottom until you curve it in to show where the sorry, I keep getting these email notifications. All right, there we go. So everyone have their ears in there, and now we're ready to do the shading inside of the ears. So if you look at the examples I have up on the screen there, it gets pretty dark on the inside, right? So typically, let me zoom in, it'll get dark around that curved triangle. So around that curved triangle, you're gonna get it pretty dark. And as you go to the top, ease up on the pencil and the shading so it gets a little lighter because it's getting closer to the light, right? And then same thing at the bottom. Right? So it's pretty dark right next to that triangle. And yes, some people have a few more creases in their ears than others. This again is more of a generic looking ear, right? And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side before I continue shading the rest. Again, nice and dark right next to the curved triangle. and then making it lighter as you go down and making it lighter as you go up as well. All right, so now the outside curve, this one, does get shaded a little bit. Now this one over here in the example in the PowerPoint, that's a little dark. We don't want to do it that dark. We're kind of going for in between these two, with shading inside and then shading a little bit on the outside. Okay, so I'm just going to add a little bit of shading just to give it some volume and some depth around the ear, right? And do the same thing for the other side. We're going to erase the center line going through the face horizontally next. If you want to give your person some earrings, by all means, go for it. Make sure that the shading that we're adding is not darker than the inside of the ear. Okay. So when you guys do your shading for your actual portrait, we're obviously going to be spending more time on the shading, right? To make it look as realistic as possible. For this, I just want to make sure that everyone understands the proportions and where things will sit on your person's face. Okay? Common thing that people will do with the ears, don't draw them right next to the eyes. We all have a space between our eyes and our ears, right? So be aware of that. All right, let's go ahead and erase the horizontal line going through the eyes and through the center of the face. We no longer need that line. We still need the vertical one though. Okay. So the measuring of the mouth, how far down to go, right? So going back to the eye, measure. Oh, do I have to wait for people, or are people ready for the mouth, or are people still working on the ears? Online people? Yes? No? Hello? People online? Yes, you're good, Fatima? Ready to go? Okay. So go ahead and grab your pencil, measure one of your eyes. They should be the same, right? And you're gonna go and line it up to the bottom of your nose, so like where the septum is, right? And you're gonna go one eye down and make a mark where that one eye down is, okay? This is not the center of our person's mouth, by the way. This is the furthest, lowest part of their mouth. So the lower lip, okay? So this is a landmark for our person's lower lip. That's the lowest portion, lowest part. Then you're gonna make a mark right above that. So if you want your person to have a big, really big upper lip or lower lip, then that's gonna be higher. I'm going to go for a normal. So just above it, I'm gonna put a mark. That's gonna be my center line of my person's lips. Okay, that's where the lips are going to be touching. And I'm gonna draw a line that goes straight across. How wide do I want to make that? It should be wider than the nostrils, and it should go to about the white part of your person's eye on both sides. So it should be wider than nostrils and almost to the iris of both eyes. Okay. People that have a closed mouth are easier to draw. When you throw in teeth, It's much harder. I'm not saying you can't do it. By all means, you're more than welcome to, but the reason why drawing teeth is hard, or someone that has an open mouth, is because their mouth is curving and it's not straight across. So teeth in the front are bigger, and as it goes to the sides, those teeth actually get smaller. And people tend to draw them the same size all the way across. So then it looks like they have those weird fake teeth. All right. Now I'm just going to make another little mark above it. Okay? And that's going to be where their upper lip is. All right. Let me show you how people sometimes draw lips that I want you to avoid and be aware of. So let's say I have, here, I'll move it down here so you can see it. So let's say I have my center mouth, center line, right? Lower, upper lip. People do this. No one has lips like that, okay? I don't care if you say, oh, that person has really huge lips. No. Okay, that is fully unnatural, right? Maybe with those like lip injections that people get, that's what they look like when they're all inflamed, right? But no one has lips that look like that. Natural lips, I should say. Okay? So the trick is the corners, when you draw the corners. So here, I'm going to briefly show you how I'm going to do it. So again, we have that, right? So instead of starting and doing a whole loop like this, the corners of our mouths are actually really thin and skinny. So I hug the outside corners, and then I make it pop up a little bit, right? And then you do that for both sides. So I'm going to do that now. Okay? So we'll do the lower lip. The lower lip is easier because it doesn't have those bumps that we have on the tops of our lips. So hug the corner for a little bit, and then dip it down to touch that bottom mark. And then you go up to the other side, same thing, hug the corner. You see how more natural this looks than these weird cartoon lips, right? Okay, so do the lower lip next. And now the upper lip is tricky because we have these little peaks, these little bumps. Those little bumps line up with these lines here, right? So I'm going to put here and here. Those little marks are where those peaks are going to go. Okay, so it's going to go this way, up, hugging the corner and up, right, to that little point. And then I'm going to dip it down and have it go up to the other point that I drew or put there, and then drop it down. Now, obviously some people don't look that pointy, right? So you can round it a little bit, like I'm going to do right now. It's going to round out those little peaks. Right? So, remember how last class I was talking about the little hole we have here in the inside corner of our eyes that drains into our noses, so that when we cry, those tears drain into the nose, right? And come out here, and hopefully you weren't like that little kid that would eat them, right, Jair? I hope you weren't one of them. So these lines actually have a function, right? If those bumps are here so that when your boogers come out, right, out of your nose, they don't go to the center. They go to the sides, and they're supposed to go out to the sides of your mouth, right? Nothing, Jair. Okay, so that's what these lines are for, that we all have. And some of them do have them more than others. Nothing, Jair. Nothing. We were talking about how your portrait is coming out probably really good. All right, let's go ahead. Now we can erase the vertical line before I start shading the lips. So we no longer need the vertical line on our paper. So we'll erase that. Now let's go ahead and shade the lips. Okay. So the lips, when a person's mouth is closed, the darkest part of their mouth is right where they touch, typically in the center. Okay. Our lips are like cylinders, right? They curve out and down. The hot spot for all lips that are closed like this is typically in the center, right here, right? Because it curves out. So that means it is a little darker towards the top of the lower lip, then it gets lighter in the center, and then it gets darker again towards the bottom. Let me zoom in so you can see that a little better. So you see how it's lighter in the center here? And then we typically have a little bit of a shadow underneath the center of our lip. Be careful not to put too much, or else you'll give that person that little mustache, or like, what is that? They call it like the flavor saver underneath the lip. All right. So making the center a little darker. The rat stash. Haven't heard that one before, Matthew. Okay, the corners. The corners of our mouth dip down a little bit. Just a little bit. And that's just to give it that feel of our cheeks, because our cheeks are connected to those corners, right? All right, now the upper lip. The upper lips for everyone tend to be a little more slim, right? A little thin. It should be thinner, but now with those lip injections, people want to have them just as big as the lower lip, and it always looks unnatural, right? But you also shade it the same way that we did the bottom lip. Nice, darker towards the center of the mouth, and then it gets a little lighter in the center, and then shade it a little bit at the top. Okay. And then if you're more than welcome to give your person a mustache if you want. Okay, now chin. Let me zoom out. We have the general face characteristics, right? You have the eyes, the nose, the mouth, and the ears. Now it's time for the hairline, right? It almost looks like a mannequin right now. We need to add a hairline, we need to add hair, we need to add a chin, and then we need to add some shading around the cheekbones. Okay? So let's start with the hairline. Here are some examples of some hairstyles. And this is where it's going to kind of determine whether you're going to draw, or I'm going to draw a male or a female. I like to go, and another reason why mine end up being a little more androgynous is because I sometimes end up choosing these like rock star hairstyles, right? From like the 80s or 70s, where they're all like super puffy and big, like this one. I'm going to draw this hairstyle right here, right? So super puffy. It's gonna cover my person's ears, which is fine, and it's gonna go down to the sides to where their shoulders would be, right? Now I want to show you, hey Jair, I want to show you guys how to do hair, because it changes things up, and some of you guys will be choosing people that have longer hair, right? And some people may think, oh, if my person doesn't have hair, I don't have to draw it. Guess what? It's actually more difficult to draw someone that has like a shaved head like me, because the hair is much smaller. You can see the scalp, so you'd be shading that too. So keep that in mind when you're choosing people, and think about their hair. All right, so hairline. I'm gonna hold my pencil like this. I'm gonna take and draw the general shape of my person's hair. So if you look at the hairline here, it goes really close to the eyes. So I'm going to bring it in here and then draw the shape of where that hair would go. So it's almost like I'm going to be doing a contour drawing of the hair and doing the shape. And then after it, I'm going to go in and fill it in. Right? You don't have to do the same hairdo I'm doing, by the way. You can choose your own. But with mine, it does end up covering the ears and part of the cheek. This is essentially what they do. You know how in the news they have sketches. They don't do it as much anymore, but they do sketches of people that they're looking for. So people sit there and describe it, right? And the sketch artist is sitting there trying to draw what the person is describing to them. And the person's hair, the one I'm choosing, gets really close to their eyebrows, which is why I'm drawing it this far down. So with mine, it's like the forehead is no longer there. Okay. All right. So I have the general shape of the hair, right? Yes, I'm covering the ears there, because on some of your portraits that you guys choose, or the people that you're going to want to paint or draw, sorry, you might only see one ear, you might see both, but it'll depend on the type of hairstyle you choose, or they have at the time, right? And so now I'm just going to go in and draw the hair in the direction that it's going in the picture. So I'm moving my pencil in that same direction, right? So this is the one time that you definitely want to show the lines when you're shading, in this case when you're drawing the hair. Because you want to mimic the same hairstyle, and if you do that correctly, then your lines for your person's hair should also be going the same direction. And again, this is more of a rough one. When you do it, you will obviously spend a little more time with this. You will also be using your eraser as a drawing tool, and I'll show you in a minute how. Let me get more of this hair down. I'm going to end up fixing the jawline too, by the way. I want to bring it in a little bit. It looks a little too wide for me. So you look like a rock star or a hairband, or part of a hairband. Like what is that? Spinal Tap, or what are some of those other bands from the 70s or 80s? Chris, help me out. I feel like you would know. Thank you. Yes, Def Leppard is a perfect example of that. Okay, so you see how he ends up, my portraits end up looking a little androgynous. So choose your person's hair, amigos. Actually, it's a good point you bring up, Jade. It's interesting that a lot of current musicians are having their hairs like this, kind of going back to like metal bands of how they used to have their hair. So it's interesting that it's coming back to that. Okay, as you guys are making your hairstyles, I'm going to refine my person's jawline and make it a little more narrow. And this is just preference. So if you want your person to have a little more of a pointy chin, this is where you start doing that. All right, so you see how I brought in the jawline I'm going to give them a little bit of a shading on the chin here, just to show that it's sticking out a little bit, right? And then the cheeks, I'm going to add a little bit of shading on the cheeks too, just to give them a rounded look to it, okay? With your portraits, one of the common things that people will say is like, oh, my person doesn't have a lot of shading on it. They're not albinos. I guarantee you guys aren't going to choose an albino person that's super, super white, right? No person is going to be as white as your paper, right? So, some examples. I think I have some here. Yeah. So some examples from previous years, right? So what we're doing, what we just did here with the left one, is getting the proportions down, showing you how to draw things correctly, right? When it comes to you doing yours, you're not only implementing those proportions and the things in the right place, but the other thing you're going to be adding is way more shading and way more detail on your drawing, right? So that one, here's another example, right? All these people are looking straight ahead. She has a little bit of her mouth open so you can see her 2 front teeth, right? The most detail tends to be the mouth and the eyes on these examples. Facial hair also can be a little difficult. So when you're doing facial hair, people will instantly go straight to the hair and do the lines. You actually do that at the end. You shade, because under our facial hair, or any hair, we have skin, right? So you want to shade the skin first and then put the facial hair on top, because the facial hair is most likely darker than your person's skin. Okay. Here's another one. All right. This one's really good. This person did a really good job with the eyes and the reflection in the glasses. He captured the reflection really well in that one. He had a mustache, right? And it was all white. So that's why you see the white specks more than the darker ones, right? And he also did a good job of shading the skin, right, with the cheeks. Let me go ahead and show you how to use your eraser for the hair, which is going to be important, like this girl did. See those highlights there? Those were done with pencil and eraser. So they filled in the hair like this, dark, right? And then they went in with the eraser and literally made those streaks, right, with the eraser, right? So that's how you would do it. So obviously I would fill this up. Let me see. Let me make this darker so you can see it a little better. Sorry, I'm doing this a little fast. Okay. Just to get it as dark as I can to show you how to make those streaks. So you fill it in, and then you come in with the eraser and bring out those streaks that are there or that you want to show up. Okay. All right, the last thing I'm going to add is the neck for my person. Okay. Where do you guys think your neck starts? Where do you guys think your neck starts? Manny, where were you touching? Yeah, the back of your head or the back of your ear. That's where your neck starts, back here. Okay. So typically people will start like way out here and then go straight down, right? It's like huge. Now, don't get me wrong, there are people that have really huge necks like that. So like football players, especially linemen, have huge necks, right? Because they have to build up those necks to hold the line when they're playing football. Now, average size necks though aren't like that. So they start back here where you can't really see it behind your ears, and then it hugs your jawline and then comes in. So here's how you do it. I like to start up here, kind of like where the nose is lined up. Hug that jawline, and then I come in and down. See that? You can come in more, and you'll be able to tell if you went too far in or too far out. Some people go crazy and they do this, super wide, right? Or they come down too far, like that. Now, yes, there are people that have longer necks than others, right? This one's actually, the first one I did isn't too bad. I was supposed to go up higher, right? So it's a nice, constant, clean curve that we typically have for our necks, right? So it comes down. Try and have your curves match on both sides if you can. You should be able to tell if they're balanced or not. Okay? And now, your neck tends to be dark down here because your chin is in front of it, right? So like right now, I have like a little bit of shadow on here. Again, it depends on the type of person you choose. So typically underneath the jawline, it's a little darker. And then it gets lighter as you go down, right? You can give your person an Adam's apple if you want. Males tend to have the Adam's apple. More prominent, I should say more prominent Adam's apple. Because girls have it too, but it's just not as prominent as a guy has. Okay. There. Okay.